Let's look into ways that Python is modular, ways that it's built into Python. One way to see that is with looking at Python modules, which gives us access to a lot more code that we don't have to build on our own. So we've learned how to create our own functions, and we've seen that Python has functions and methods, and these come in two kinds. So one we've already seen, which is the built-in, and the other is those that are imported through modules. Now, the built-in ones are ones we've used so far, except for the random one, which we've imported. And these are just, we don't need to do anything special for them. We just use them. For example, print and int and other things like string, etc. We just learn about them and we use them. They're available to us, they're built in. Other Python functions, which are already created for us, then we can use, are available if you import the relevant module. So for example, import random, which we used in homework 3. Once you import the module, you have access to a lot of functions, and you can use those functions by doing random dot and then the name of that function or method. So in homework 3, we used the function random.choice, which picked a random element from the list. So once we imported random, we could use that module anywhere in our program. And so in that particular case, we used a particular function in the module, which is .choice. And we fed it a list, and it would return a random element from that list. So we imported it once in our program, and then we could do random.choice to access that particular function in the module random. So here's the thing. Some of those modules that you import are always included in Python. They get downloaded, installed when you download and install Python on your computer. Others that are being built or have been built or may be built have to be installed in your system. So random comes with all Python versions automatically. You get it whether you like it or not, so you just have to import. But there's some other ones, such as matplotlib, which is a module we're going to look at a lot in the coming weeks. They're not necessarily present when you download your Python. Now, JupyterLab should have matplotlib already installed, as well as some others. But others, just so you know, you shouldn't have to install any for this class, but just so you know, if you run into and you learn about a module that you want to use and you import it and you run into this error, it's because that particular module has to be installed first. So module not found error probably means the module has not been installed in your local version of Python. So the NLTK module is a great one for natural language processing. It's not usually automatically installed with Python, so you'd need to install it first and then import it. Now you only need to install once, by the way. Once it's installed, it's there. Every program that you want to use it in would have to be imported, but only once in your program. So install once and for all, and then import once for each program. All right, so that's great. We've got built-in modules. We've got modules that we import, and some of them we have to install. Once we get them, we have access to these functions. So how did we discover what functions are available in a module? We can get a list of the functions that are available by doing this call, dir and then the module name. For example, dir random. It will give you this list. It's a list of all the functions that are available in the random module. So we can see the second one on the list is choice, which we've used. There's also choices. There's one called randint, and one just called random. We've got seed, shuffle, and many others. That's great. Some of these names I don't even know if I could pronounce. So how do we find out what those functions are doing? Like, these can be very helpful functions. They could save us from writing a lot of code. Like, could you imagine trying to write a code that does random selection? So how do we know how we can use them and what they do? So here's another code that you can write, the help function, and then you do the module name dot the function name, and it will give you very basic help. So if we did help random.choice, we would get this printout. And it tells us that it's a help, and it actually gives us a couple of pieces of interesting information. There's some extra stuff that maybe is not so important. So it gives us the name of the function, and then it gives us kind of an idea of what kind of parameter this function wants and how many. So it's looking for a sequence of some sort, and just one argument is all it takes. And then this is the most useful line here at the very end. It's telling us very succinctly what's happening, what this function will do. It chooses a random element from a non-empty sequence. So that's the help function, to find out what those functions do and maybe what kind of arguments you need to feed them. There's a few other things that we do with modules once we import them that is good to know about. So you've seen how to import them, you know you have to install some of them. There's a few conventions here that you don't need to know, but can be, I mean, it's not going to stop you from working with the code, but it can be very helpful to know. So one thing is that you can rename the module as you import it. So if we do import, we can do import as rand. And so we're importing the module and immediately renaming it, which means later on we can call this code, instead of saying random.choice, now we have to do rand.choice. It will work just the same because we did import rand as rand. Now, why to do that? Well, it might save you some typing. You could do abbreviation, especially for some of those long names that we saw in the random function. You know, there might be a very long name for your module that you're importing that you want to save time typing. But actually, there's another reason, which you will get more and more familiar with as you get better at coding with Python and get more experience. And that is that there's kind of this maybe unwritten rule, a standard that Python programmers tend to follow, that certain modules are always imported with another name. And they're usually abbreviations. It's just a convention. It's not going to hurt you if you don't do this, but it's good to know as you try to learn to read other people's codes and help people understand your code. So for example, with that matplotlib module that I talked about, which you're going to be looking at in other videos, a common convention is to import matplotlib as PLT. So that's a convention. It's a standard naming for that particular module. One more thing about modules is they can have submodules. So this, you can have access to them once you import them. You have access to the submodule using the dot notation. However, if you know that all the functions you want to use are in a particular submodel, you can just import that submodel. So matplotlib, for example, has a submodule called pyplot, which we will use in this class. It's very useful and it covers a lot of things. So we could do a couple of things to just import the pyplot submodule from the matplotlib module, which would save us some typing. So here are two ways of doing this. So the bottom one might be what you expect from what you've seen in the previous slide. So import matplotlib.pyplot, which by the way, if we didn't import just this subplot, we'd have to write this whole thing, matplotlib.pyplot, whatever function we wanted to use. Well, in this particular case, we do PLT, maybe, but if you use the standard nickname, as it were, for matplotlib, but it'd still be, in that case, if you imported matplotlib as PLT, it'd still be plt.pyplot, whatever function you want to use. So by importing just a submodule, we can save a lot of typing. And these, again, this is two ways of doing the same thing. You can import using that dot function, that dot method, the notation, and then give it a nickname. Or you can do this other syntax, which does the same thing, from matplotlib, so from the main module, import pyplot. So from main module, import submodule. And again, we can give it a new nickname. So it's two ways of saying the same thing. So we're importing just a submodule called pyplot, and we're renaming it as PLT.